The moment they realized they won $85 million, they started acting like I was a burden in my own house. I was still on the staircase when the first scream hit the walls. Not fear, not pain, but the kind of scream people make when they think the world suddenly belongs to them. My daughter-in-law was spinning in circles, waving the lottery ticket like it was some royal document. "We're rich! Do you hear me? We're rich!" she shouted, already claiming herself queen of the place. My son stood right beside her, laughing harder than I've seen him laugh in years. The same son who couldn't pay rent without my help. He didn't even glance my way, not once. Before I could take another step down, she pointed the ticket at my face like a weapon. "This house is going to look so different once we redo it," she said, already rewriting history. My house, my mortgage, my sacrifices. And suddenly she was talking like she owned every brick. My son nodded along, chest puffed out, acting like he'd earned this windfall with sweat instead of luck. "Mom, let us handle things from now on," he said. Handle things? They hadn't handled a single bill in 7 years. In a matter of minutes they went from broke to bosses, from grateful to arrogant, from quiet to power drunk. I didn't interrupt. I didn't argue. I watched and I understood. Money doesn't change people. It unmasks them. And if you're still here, tell me where you're watching from, because what happened next? Even $85 million couldn't prepare them for it. They celebrated like I never existed, even though they lived off my house for years. The second the screaming died down, I realized they weren't calling me to join them. They were deliberately keeping me out of their little victory circle. My daughter-in-law clutched a ticket tight against her chest like she was afraid I'd steal it. Even though I hadn't moved an inch toward her, she kept glancing at me with that same sharp smirk she used whenever she wanted to remind me of my place. As if I didn't pay for every corner of this roof long before she married my son. My son didn't even bother to meet my eyes. He was too busy popping open a bottle of cheap champagne they'd kept from some old anniversary, suddenly acting like he'd been waiting his whole life to toast without me around. He raised his glass toward his wife, not toward the woman who fed him, housed him, and kept him afloat when he couldn't even keep a job. Music blasted, doors slammed. They started dancing, actual dancing, in the living room I paid for. The same living room they once asked permission to decorate. Now they acted like I was the guest, the outsider, the inconvenience. Not once did they say, "Mom, come sit." Not once did they acknowledge that if I hadn't taken them in, this morning would have been spent in some cramped rental they could barely afford. But the moment people get power, even borrowed, accidental power, they rewrite the past. They erase the hands that fed them. They forget the roof that sheltered them. Gratitude is always the first thing to disappear when greed walks in. Before they even ate, she told me to stay out of their way because rich people need privacy. Not a good morning, not a thank you. Just instructions like I was suddenly the housemaid they never hired. I had just stepped into the kitchen to start breakfast, the same breakfast I'd been cooking for them for 7 years, when my daughter-in-law raised her hand at me like she was stopping traffic. "Don't touch anything," she said. "We'll handle the kitchen from now on." We're not living like before. Living like before? They weren't living before. They were surviving off me. She opened the fridge like she owned every shelf, pushing things around, tossing out what she didn't like, things I bought with my money. My son stood behind her, nodding like a loyal assistant, not a grown man with a mother standing 3 feet away. "Mom, maybe just give us space today," he added. "Belle and I have a lot to discuss. Big decisions about my house, my property, my life." And suddenly I was expected to step aside like I was blocking their success. Belle started listing rules faster than I could blink. No entering the living room without knocking. No touching important papers. No giving opinions unless asked. She even pointed at the old dining table and said, "We'll replace all this stuff soon. It doesn't fit our lifestyle anymore." Lifestyle. Overnight they went from barely buying groceries to talking like they owned a mansion in the hills. I stood there silent, watching how quickly a lottery ticket could flip a person into a tyrant. Power doesn't create entitlement. It just gives entitled people permission to show it. My son said the house felt crowded, the same house I bought and maintained alone. He didn't say it softly. He said it like a complaint, like he'd been tolerating tight spaces for years. Instead of living rent-free under my roof, they were in the living room, pacing like real estate agents, pointing at walls, corners, and furniture as if everything needed to be replaced immediately. Belle crossed her arms and said, "We need more space. This layout doesn't work for us anymore." Us, as if I wasn't standing right behind her. My son chimed in. "Yeah, maybe it's time we expand. Maybe knock out a wall. Maybe redo the upstairs completely." Upstairs where my bedroom was. Belle didn't even bother lowering her voice. "Honestly, it would be easier if your mom stayed somewhere else while we fix everything. A hotel or something. It's not safe for her to be around construction." Construction. They hadn't even made breakfast yet, and they were already planning my exit. Not one of them said, "Mom, what do you think?" Not one of them remembered who signed every paper, who paid every bill, who kept this house together while they were drowning financially. They just decided I was the obstacle, the one thing standing between them and their new rich life. My son shrugged, pretending it was practical, not cruel. "Mom, it's just temporary," he said. "Once the renovations are done, we'll figure things out." Figure things out? I knew what that meant. Money doesn't just talk. It pushes people to shove out the ones who help them survive. Convenience always shouts louder than love when greed gets comfortable. At their last-minute celebration, they introduced me as someone just staying temporarily. Not Mom, not the woman who raised him, just a random temporary guest in the house I paid for. They planned the party in under 2 hours, loud music, cheap decorations, neighbors pouring in because people love standing next to new money. The moment I walked into the living room, conversations dipped. Then eyes drifted toward me like I wasn't supposed to be there. Belle gripped my son's arm and loudly whispered, "Don't make it awkward. Just say she's visiting." Visiting? 7 years. 7 years of bills, repairs, childcare, meals, and they reduced me to a visitor in front of strangers. My son cleared his throat and forced a smile. Yeah, this is my mom. She's, staying with us for a little while." The guests nodded politely, but their faces said everything. Temporary, unwanted, out of place. A woman I'd never met tilted her head and asked, "Oh, so you're not part of the household?" Belle jumped in before I could even open my mouth. "She's just here till we start renovations. You know, privacy and all." Her tone made it clear she didn't want me around even for the conversation. They didn't introduce me as family. They didn't thank me. They didn't acknowledge a single sacrifice. Instead, they pushed me into the corner like an embarrassing relative they hoped people wouldn't ask about. Guests laughed, toasted, and congratulated them. Not one of them looked my way again. And that's the thing about disrespect in public. It's never an accident. Never a slip. When people humiliate you in front of others, it means they've been practicing it in private. She slid papers toward me like I was an employee, not the homeowner. No explanation. No respect. Just a stack of documents pushed across the dining table like a bill I was obligated to pay. Belle tapped the top page with her manicured nail. "We need your signature," she said, already sounding impatient. Not asking. Expecting. My son stood behind her with his arms crossed, trying and failing to look authoritative. "Mom, it's just legal stuff," he added. "Standard. For the renovations. Standard. I've seen enough contracts in my life to know when someone's trying to move you out of your own property." The first page alone told me everything. Transfer of partial ownership, temporary relocation agreement, permission for structural changes, all written in a way that sounded harmless but meant, "Give us control. Step aside. Don't come back until we say so." Belle leaned forward. "We need this done today. Investors will want things clean and simple." Investors? They'd been rich for less than 8 hours and were already talking like CEOs. When I didn't pick up the pen, her smile slipped. "You're not going to cause problems, right? We can't build our future if you're stuck in the past." My son sighed dramatically, like I was exhausting him. "Come on, Mom. Don't make this difficult. Just sign it. It's better for everyone." Better for everyone? Or better for them? They forgot who kept the lights on, who kept the mortgage paid, who kept them fed when they had nothing. But greed doesn't care about history. Greed only cares about winning, and it always gets louder when it believes you can't fight back. Greed becomes bold the moment it thinks it already won. They were already choosing mansions online, and not once did they mention my name. Not a single time. I stood in the hallway while they sat on the couch, scrolling through luxury listings like they'd been rich their whole lives. "Look at this one," Belle squealed. "It has a private theater and a 6-car garage." My son leaned over her shoulder, eyes wide. We could host parties, finally live the way we deserve. Never we when it came to bills. Never we when the mortgage was due. But now, suddenly, they moved as one as long as the future didn't involve me. Belle clicked through photos, with the confidence of someone who had already written me out of their story. 3 bedrooms is perfect. One for us, one for the kids, one for my office. Yet somehow there was no room marked mom. Not even a hint of it. My son didn't object, didn't pause, didn't look over his shoulder to see if I was listening. He just nodded. Yeah, this is the fresh start we've been waiting for. Fresh start. Translation. A new life where I wasn't even a footnote. They talked about pools, home gyms, marble floors, high ceilings, every detail planned down to the color of the kitchen cabinets. But not once did they say, where will mom stay? Not once did they say, she's part of this. Not once did they say my name. And you don't need anyone to insult you directly. Silence does that on its own. People reveal the truth not by what they say but by who they never mention. She looked me in the eyes and said, you need to leave today. The words were sharp, rehearsed, like she had been waiting to finally spit them out. She stood in the doorway of my bedroom, arms crossed, chin lifted with the confidence of someone who believed wealth had crowned her. Behind her, my son hovered like a shadow, silent, stiff, pretending he wasn't part of this. She walked in without permission, her heels tapping against the wooden floor I had polished 1,000 times. Her eyes scanned the room with ownership, not respect. That closet, she said, pointing. We need it. And this room will become our office. So start packing. Today. Before I could answer, she grabbed one of my drawers and yanked it open, letting my neatly folded clothes spill out. My blouses, my scarves, even the sweater my late husband gifted me, all tossed onto the bed as if they were clutter she was eager to erase. I stepped forward, hands trembling. These are my things. She didn't even look at me. They won't be for long. My suitcase was dragged out from under the bed, unzipped, waiting like an open mouth ready to swallow my life. For the first time, she looked directly at me, wearing a smile that wasn't a smile at all. You should be grateful we let you stay this long. My son still said nothing. The room suddenly felt smaller, tighter, as if it too wanted me gone. I realized in that moment that entitlement doesn't appear all at once. It grows quietly, inch by inch, until it finally speaks out loud with no shame and no fear of consequences. She thought I had no power left. She thought I had nowhere to go. She thought I would leave quietly. She was wrong. He stood beside her, head down, while she tossed my bags out. She didn't even hesitate. She grabbed my suitcase, dragged it across the floor, and dumped it by the front door like it belonged to a stranger passing through. Shirts, scarves, even my old photo album slid out onto the tiles. But the real blow wasn't her hands throwing my life around. It was his silence. My son stood right beside her, arms stiff at his sides, eyes glued to the floor like a child waiting for a scolding. Not once did he say, "Stop." Not once did he pick up a single thing she threw. Not once did he look at me the way a son should look at the mother who raised him alone. "Move these outside," she said to him, as if giving an order to a delivery boy. He didn't argue. He didn't question. He just bent down and started stacking my things, avoiding my eyes like the truth might burn him. I watched him lift the same suitcase I bought for him when he went to college, the one I couldn't afford but still bought with pride. Now he held it like it was infected just because it belonged to me. She kept talking loudly, bragging about their new life, their rich future, their plans without complications. I was the complication. A sweater slipped from his hands and landed near my feet. I bent to pick it up, and for a second, our eyes met. His lips parted like he wanted to speak, but he didn't. He just looked away. The silence between us was heavier than the suitcase he carried. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't fear. It wasn't pressure. It was a choice. His silence told me everything. He chose her pride over my dignity, her money over my years of sacrifice, her voice over mine. And betrayal doesn't always arrive as harsh words or slammed doors. Sometimes, it arrives quietly. Sometimes, it stands right in front of you with its head bowed, pretending not to see the damage it's doing. They forgot who kept them fed, sheltered, and afloat for 7 years. The moment that lottery ticket turned into $85 million, every sacrifice I ever made for them vanished from their minds like it never happened. 7 years. 7 years of bills I paid, meals I cooked, and crises I covered without a complaint. When they moved in just for a few months after my son lost his job, I opened my door without hesitation. I told them, "Take your time, get back on your feet." I meant it. I didn't charge rent. I didn't demand deadlines. I didn't keep score. When their pantry was empty, I filled it. When their baby was sick, I stayed up all night so they could sleep. When they argued, I watched the kids so they could breathe. When her car broke down, I paid the mechanic because she said she was too stressed to deal with it. I remember the winter they couldn't afford heating. I quietly covered it. They never knew. I remember the month they missed their insurance payment. I paid that too. I remember the times she cried in my kitchen, saying she felt like a failure. I hugged her. I told her family sticks together. But today, she acted like I was the burden, like I was the extra, like I was the guest who stayed too long. And my son, he stood there letting her rewrite history. Like the roof over his head appeared out of nowhere. Like meals cooked themselves. Like raising his kids cost me nothing in time, money, or energy. The flashbacks hit me all at once, sharper than anything she said. The nights I stayed awake waiting for them to come home safe. The weekends I skipped outings just so their children felt cared for. The savings I burned through so they wouldn't feel ashamed or powerless. They forgot all of it. But money doesn't erase memories, it erases gratitude. And the moment wealth showed up, their selective memory kicked in. They remembered everything they wanted, and conveniently forgot everything I gave. They didn't know the house wasn't theirs to claim, not even for a minute. While they were downstairs arguing about where I'd go and how quickly they could take over, I went straight to my room and pulled out the one thing they never bothered to ask about: the legal file. They thought living in my house for 7 years somehow made it theirs. They thought paying a few grocery bills recently gave them some kind of authority. They thought that lottery ticket turned them into landlords overnight. What they didn't know was this: the house wasn't just mine. It was legally locked under my name only. And even more important, it was protected by a clause they had never even heard of. I opened the folder, and there it was. The updated deed, the inheritance papers, and the special occupancy clause my lawyer insisted on adding years ago. A clause that stated no one could remove me, pressure me, or alter ownership without my written consent, not even family. They had no rights. Not to the house, not to the land, not to a single brick. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't have to, because the loudest people in the room are always the ones holding nothing. The quiet ones, the ones they overlook, are usually holding the strongest cards. And they had no idea that while they were celebrating their new life, I was sitting upstairs calm, reading the paper that made their little plan collapse before it even started. They thought they won the lottery, but they hadn't seen what I was holding yet. I stayed calm and let them believe everything was going their way. That was the moment I made my decision. I wouldn't shout. I wouldn't defend myself. I wouldn't argue with people who were already drunk on imaginary power. Instead, I stepped aside and let them keep digging. They strutted around the house, talking loudly about their future, acting like the walls and floors were already in their names. She barked orders at movers on the phone, bragged to relatives, and even told neighbors that I'd be transitioning out soon. I just nodded, silent, unbothered, because every arrogant word coming out of their mouths was turning into evidence of harassment, eviction threats, and financial coercion. I recorded nothing. I didn't have to. Their texts, their messages, their smug comments in front of witnesses were already piling up in my favor. They thought my silence meant defeat. But silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. And while they were busy celebrating, I quietly gathered the documents they never knew existed. The deed, the occupancy clause, the inheritance papers. I made a single call to my lawyer, who told me exactly what I already suspected. Let them keep talking. The more they push, the easier this gets. So I waited. I watched. I let them build their own case against themselves with every insult and every threat. They believed they were winning, but the truth was simple. Arrogant people don't need enemies. They destroy themselves just fine, you just have to give them time. One call from the lottery office and their celebration stopped instantly. It happened in the middle of their bragging marathon. She was showing off the ticket to her friends, already talking about luxury cars and a mansion, with a pool she couldn't even swim in. My son sat beside her, nodding like a man hypnotized by numbers he hadn't even touched yet. Then her phone rang. She put it on speaker, because of course she wanted everyone to hear the official confirmation. But the voice on the other end wasn't congratulating. It was cold, professional, direct. Ma'am, we need to verify something regarding the ownership of the winning ticket. There seems to be a discrepancy. Her smile collapsed so fast it was almost comical. What do you mean discrepancy? She snapped. The representative continued calmly, almost bored. The name written on the back doesn't match your information. We need the legal owner to contact us immediately. Until then, the payout is on hold. Silence. Heavy, choking silence. My son leaned forward, eyes wide, like he suddenly forgot how breathing works. She stared at the ticket, flipping it over and over, as if the name printed on the back would magically change. Because that name wasn't hers, and it wasn't my son's. Their celebration evaporated in seconds. The music stopped. Guests whispered. Someone quietly grabbed their purse and left. She tried calling the office back. Blocked. She tried refreshing emails, nothing. She tried pretending everything was fine, impossible. It was the first time in hours, maybe years, that she looked genuinely afraid. The truth was simple. When you build your future on something you snatched, it only takes one phone call for the whole empire to crumble. When I showed them the paperwork, they realized the ticket wasn't theirs. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. I didn't even smile. I just placed the folder on the table, the same table they used to celebrate without me, and opened it calmly. The house deed with my name only. The lottery ticket copy with my handwriting on the back. The security cam photo from the store showing me buying it. Their expressions? Pure shock. She leaned forward first, snatching the papers like they would rearrange themselves. Her eyes scanned every line, her breath turning shaky. This can't be real, she whispered. My son grabbed the papers next, hands trembling. Mom, why is your name? Because it's my ticket, I said. Always was. That's when the panic hit them like a slap. She spun toward him. I told you to sign it. I told you. Why didn't you tell your mother to? He snapped back. How was I supposed to know she wrote her name? You said nobody does that. Oh, so now it's my fault you didn't check? Their argument exploded right there, loud, ugly, desperate. Blame flying in every direction except the one that mattered. Themselves. She accused him of being stupid. He accused her of being greedy. Guests stared from the doorway, some shaking their heads, some secretly recording. And they kept going. If you had just listened. No. You told me it was ours. You promised we'd never have to deal with her again. Well, look how that turned out. The same people who stood together when they thought they were rich now tore each other apart because the money was never theirs. In the middle of their chaos, I simply stood there steady, quiet, untouched. Because betrayal always circles back. It just takes the right moment for the truth to walk in and sit at the table. When everything collapsed, suddenly I was family again. That's always how it goes, isn't it? The moment the money disappeared, so did their confidence, and suddenly I mattered again. My son was the first to break. 1 minute earlier he wouldn't even look at me while my bags were being thrown out. Now he stood there with his voice cracking, saying softly, Mom, we didn't mean it. We were just overwhelmed. Overwhelmed. That was his word for 7 years of support erased in a single morning. His wife followed right behind him. Mascara shrieked, hands shaking as she reached for me like nothing had happened. We were stupid, she said. Please, just don't ruin our lives. You know we love you. Love? Where was that love when she told me to leave today? Where was it when she tossed my clothes into the hallway like garbage? But that's what losing $85 million does. It makes greedy people suddenly remember the value of the person they stepped on. She kept begging, we made a mistake. You can still share it with us. We can figure something out together. Together. The same woman who told the neighbors I was just staying temporarily. I stood there quietly, letting them talk, letting them twist, letting them feel every ounce of fear they created. Then I answered, I'm not ruining your lives, I said. You did that on your own the moment you forgot who kept you standing. My son's face fell. She covered her mouth, whispering, please, please don't do this. But I wasn't cruel. I wasn't vindictive. I was simply done. I'm keeping my house. I told them, and I'm keeping my distance. That's the consequence. The silence afterwards said everything, far louder than their screams that morning. Respect comes first. Money comes later. And if someone forgets that, they lose both. Come in karma if you think they deserved it.